I would assume that we're not going to have Sunday school for the Easter, but if that changes, we'll let everybody know. Any other concerns? Now, we are having a deacons meeting, so if there's anything you want me to bring up, let me know. Okay, let me open us with prayer. Lord, thank you for the day. Thank you for the blessings that we have from you. Thank you for all that you have given us, our freedom from sin, your word that we're going to be studying shortly, the joy and comfort we have with you. Lord, be with our country, be with the world, be with our leaders as they struggle with all the evil in the world. Lord, thank you again for who you are. In your Son's name I pray. Amen. So we're going to be starting in the section 13, 4 through 7, what love does and does not do. And I'll start the first sentence because that's segregated from the rest of the verse 4. Love is patient, love is kind. What does patience mean? What does it mean to be patient?
When Barry makes me crazy, I'm supposed to just smile. Or understand it.
So if I understood you, if somebody's driving you crazy, you still can smile. I think that's what you said. That's not a bad way of saying it. Anybody else want to take a stab at what patience means?
Slow to anger.
Slow to anger. And so it's somewhat of a passive verb that we will not jump immediately to criticizing somebody or being angry or making assumptions about something. So it means taking our time, and so it's passive. To be kind is active, and so they kind of come together like yin and yang. So being patient is passive in the sense we will not do something right away. Being kind is an active verb in the sense that we will be actually doing something. So what does it mean to be kind? Lately I've been seeing that in front of some of the elementary schools. They must have some kind of program about that. You see it on their fence, a couple of the, Keeler Union and over at the Capilani, I see it on their fence, be kind. What does it mean to be kind?
To help others.
To help others. And so to be kind means to help others, to look for others' benefits besides your own. Now I'm going to ask Judy to go ahead and read the rest of 4.
It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud.
And go on with 5, please.
It is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs.
And so what do we see about this? We see 8 negative verbs. And so he's starting off and telling you love is patient, love is kind, and he's telling you what it's not. Does not envy, does not boast, is not proud, is not rude, is not self-seeking, is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Some of these are fairly easy translations from the Greek. I think we all know what envy is. Boasting means bragging. The one that's maybe a little bit different because it doesn't have the same flavor in English is rude. The word rude that he uses here is only used one other place in the New Testament, and that's earlier in this letter where he's talking about the sexual moral business that was going on with incest earlier on in one of the chapters that we studied. So it has a connotation of shameful behavior with a sexual overtone. So rather than what we might say is rude, as I, ignore Charmaine talking to me, or I cut her off if she's trying to talk. To us, that's kind of what rude means, that we're kind of socially nasty to somebody. But in the Greek, it carries somewhat of a shameful behavior with sexual overtones. But and the last one is, it keeps no records of wrongs. Literally in the Greek, it does not reckon, calculate the evil bad. And so what does that mean? That we don't keep a record of wrongs.
You did this bad thing to me, so I'm going to remember it and get even.
Right. Guys often say about women, whether or not it's right or wrong, is they forgive us, guys, but they don't forget about it. And so what is Paul saying we should be doing? We should not be remembering those, right?
Forgive and forget.
We should forgive and forget. And you're going to get me in trouble, but I'm not going to say anything more about that in regards to men and women. But I think, to be honest about it, it's all of us that do that. That we might forgive somebody, but we don't forget. Larry was just, when he was over at our place, he was talking about his granddaughter, and one of them is more likely to remember things, right? And so
first grade and in trouble.
And so that, we're not supposed to remember those things once we've forgiven them. But we should remember a little bit to protect ourselves. If I'm picking on Charmaine, but if Charmaine's done something to me, and I have, forgiven her, and I'm not going to reckon against her in the future, but I think we all, be safe, need to remember that that's happened to us in the past. What is telling us that we should not change our behavior to her, my behavior to Charmaine, because of whatever she might have done to me. But as human beings, we need to be careful. Somebody has done something like breaking into my house, I might forgive him, but I'm not going to, stop being safe about that. Does that make any sense? So we're not supposed to be changing our behavior to somebody. And so this is, there's one more, but that we're getting to, but this is 8 things that love is not. And so he's trying to describe love. If we had an English teacher here, what has Paul done with love? It's kind of a trick question. What has he made love? He's personified love. And so love is an emotion. Love is a behavior. But he's giving it qualities. And so he's personifying love. We do that a lot. We got to realize that that's what he's doing here. He's personifying love, giving love itself a personality. So these are the personality traits of love. It's kind, it's patient, it's not all these other things. And it's a common way we actually talk about things, and sometimes concepts are personified so we can understand them better. Sometimes we do that to things that are not persons, like our pets. we talk about them having a personality. And so this is a common way for us to try to understand a concept better. Let us go on with 6, please.
Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth.
Okay. Love does not delight in evil. What does that mean? In the Greek, it's a little bit clearer, but it's hard to translate. And another translation is, love does not rejoice in behaving unjustly towards others. And so it's a little bit more active. That we do not rejoice in behaving unjustly towards others. That means we're behaving unjustly towards others. Sometimes it's hard not to delight in evil. If somebody's been very bad to us. There's a certain Russian politicians that some American politicians are suggesting the Russians assassinate him. And I would think if that happened, a lot of us would probably rejoice. But we're told here not to rejoice in evil for other people. Is that easy to do if somebody's harmed you? No, it's not. Many, many years ago, my house was burglarized. And they took the jewelry, but they also took a little box that had all my kids' baby teeth. We got almost all the jewelry back, but we never got that little box that had the baby teeth. And years later, well, not that long, sometime later, I found out it was the grandson of somebody who lived down the street from down in Idaho, about 6 or 7 houses down. And it took me a long time not to think I was going to throw a firebomb into their garage when I drove by for a while. I go by every time and say, I have to forgive that. But it kept, every time I went by, luckily I usually drive down when we do at that time, but every time I went by, it took me a long time not to want to do something about it because I felt so hurt about it. My wife was able to forgive a lot quicker, I think. But it took me a long time because, jewelry can replace those teeth, we could never do that. So I understand sometimes it's really hard to stop doing that.
And what was in the small box?
My son's baby teeth. The tooth fairy kept them all. And put them in a little box. We had a little box that had them in. And so the jewelry was bad enough because some of it was given her. We actually got it back, most of it from the police. But the teeth we never got back. I'm assuming he looked at it and just threw the box away because it had no value except for us. And I wouldn't be surprised that some of you have had similar experiences. It's sometimes hard, but the Lord and Paul in the writing say that we need to do that. Who does it hurt if we don't have forgiveness to somebody?
God.
Yeah, but really, who does it hurt the most?
Ourselves.
It hurts ourselves. Obviously, if I felt bad about this guy, he probably didn't care. But it hurt me more than that, and it hurt my relationship with the Lord. And so we need to, the ability to forgive is one of the greatest blessings that the Lord gives us. Because He has forgiven us, we should be able to forgive somebody else. And I see at my business, some people, their unforgiveness harms them more than whatever the initial thing that they're unforgiving about over the years because how that warps their life, how that warps their health. The Lord wants us to forgive. That doesn't mean that somebody doesn't suffer the social consequences. This fellow ended up being caught, and if he's still alive, he's still in jail because he got in even bigger trouble on the mainland. And so, it doesn't mean that because I ended up forgiving him and I don't feel like firebombing the house anymore, the family isn't there anymore, that he didn't end up suffering the social consequences of his behavior. Sometimes I see where people don't want to press charges because we're Christian, we're forgiven. I think that's wrong. You know, if somebody has done something, you can forgive them, but they should suffer the consequences. Paul says that, and the Lord says that in some other places in the Bible, that we can forgive them. But as Paul says, sometimes we will escape just like somebody escaping to the fire that is without anything. We're forgiven, but we won't continue to have the benefits that we might need until we have had the problem resolved. And so instead of delighting in the evil, what does he say we should do? We should rejoice in the truth. Okay, Charmaine, 7, please.
It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.
So now he's gone from being negative to being positive. He's got positive things. And the Greek can be translated as all things, where it says always. And so other translations of that verse is it bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Another translation is love never tires of support, never loses faith, never exhausts hope, never gives up. So what can you say about love in a positive? I gave you 8 things it's not. What can you say about love in the positive?
It's expressed in many forms.
Expressed in many forms, and it's never going to give up. It's involved in everything. You know, so everything that we do should be done with love. You know, love, again, personifies, takes everything in, bears all things, has faith in everything, hopes all things, endures all things. It never gives up, never loses faith, never exhausts hope. And so love is something that should give us strength in all situations. So I think this section is one that's quoted more often than many others of Paul's letters, and you can see why. Because love is something that's important for all of us. It binds ourselves to other people, binds ourselves to the Lord, and gives us strength to carry on no matter what the circumstances are. So now we'll go on to the next section with this love perseverance, which is 8 to 13. Joy, 8, please.
Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away.
So love never fails. We've been talking about that. Love never fails. It continues to be there. It doesn't give up. It endures. It never fails. What are prophecies? What are tongues? What is knowledge? What are those things? A hint, we've been talking about things like that the last few weeks.
The gifts.
Yeah, the gifts. And so these are gifts, spiritual gifts that he's talking about. The spiritual gifts that he's talking about here is prophecies, speaking in tongues, and knowledge. They will pass away. When will they pass away? What's he talking about here? He says they'll pass away. You know, the tongues will be stilled, prophecies will be cease, and knowledge will pass away. When is that going to happen? End times, exactly. And so what he's talking about is these things, these gifts, in fact, all spiritual gifts that the Lord has given us, the Spirit has given us, will pass away at the end times. Why will they pass away then? They were exactly right. We won't need them anymore. Not that, you know, not in a negative thing that things are going away. We won't need them anymore. We'll be with the Lord. We won't need prophecies that try to understand what the Lord wants us to do. We won't have to speak in tongues to express ourselves to the Lord and to others. We will have full knowledge at that time of the Lord. And when 9, please? 9 and 10, I'm sorry.
For we know in part, and we prophesy in part.
10, go on with 10, please.
But when perfection comes, the imperfection disappears.
And so he goes on and answers the question I had for you. You know, that at the moment we don't know things clearly, but when perfection comes, when the end time comes, when we go back to the Lord, we will know fully. And so we struggle now to fully understand the Lord. Probably never fully understand. I don't think I will. But when the end times come, when I'm in face the Lord, a lot of things will fall away. And some of that inability to understand will fall away, and we will understand fully. How does that make you feel? I'm sorry, Debbie?
Good.
Good, yeah, it makes you feel good. That many questions that I have, and I have a bunch, because I don't understand, you know, what the Lord wants us to do in certain circumstances. I think many of those questions will be answered. Well, I should say it that way. I think all of those questions will be answered. That we will fully understand what the Lord has wanted us to do. Does anybody fully now understand what the Lord wants us to do? Shaking hands over. And so I don't think all of us fully understand. I think that's why we're all here, trying to understand better. Okay. Debbie, 11, please.
When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me.
So what's he trying to do here? You know, remember, he's talking to the Corinthians.
Trying to help them to progress.
Yeah, he's trying to help them progress. Basically, it's a nice way of saying that you've been childish, you haven't behaved like adults. You need to put that behind you. and behave like an adult. Judy's granddaughter might be, or my granddaughter might be causing trouble. How do we treat them? Judy?
I let the mother take care of it.
And to be honest about it, we in my household follow what the mother wants us to do too. I think, the good grandparents, that's what they do. They try to be consistent with what the parents, how the parents want the child raised. But we don't treat them. I'm sure Judy doesn't treat her granddaughters like her son. She expects a different behavior from her son. Of course, my wife says all of the men in her family in maturity age is 13, so she treats us like that, me and the boys. But we treat adults differently. We expect a different behavior from them. We put up, especially a small child, some behavior that we would not put up with an adult. I think that's something that's universal, and I think the Corinthians would understand what he's trying to say. "12 now, Judy?"
Are we 12?
Yeah.
Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known.
So, again, this is directed at the Corinthian audience. One of the major manufacturers in Corinthians actually bronze mirrors. Now we have mirrors that are much better than what they had then. We have, basically glass mirrors with whatever is behind it that allows the reflection. So they actually are very good. But a bronze mirror was basically a polished metal sheet. And they were not that bad, but they were not anywhere as good as ours. So the Corinthians would understand what he's talking about, because that was one of the major manufacturers' products from their city. I don't know if I've ever seen a metal mirror. Has anybody actually seen a metal mirror?
Is that like looking at your chrome fender?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Looking at your chrome fender might be a good example. And so how good a reflection is that? It's not very good, at least I don't have chrome fenders anymore. But maybe I do. I haven't paid attention. But I haven't looked at my face because it's kind of down. But I remember the vehicle my wife had that had big chrome fenders, and you're right. It gives a fairly distorted, even if it's polished well, view. So he's saying we don't see things clearly now, but we will. When will we see fully? Again, when is that time? The end times, when we're back with Christ. When we see Christ face to face. And we'll see each other, as he says, face to face. We will see each other fully at that time. One of to me, the sad things about the human experience is that we don't fully understand each other. All of us have been married, even married for a long time, realize that we don't always communicate completely. We don't always get what we're trying to get across to the other person, even though we've been with them for many, many years and tried to understand them. There is a problem. We don't communicate as well as we might, well as we will when all the others has fallen away. I know, and I expect every one of the rest of you is the same thing, that we don't always get across what we're trying to say or understand what's being said to us. And that can, of course, lead to what we call miscommunication, which can be not much fun. But there will be a time that we will fully be able to communicate clearly. I won't put anybody in the spot, but I don't think anybody here is fully communicated all the time with everybody. I mean, with their loved ones. I'm sure there's times that things don't go across as well as you want, or you don't understand what they're trying to tell you. Okay, Dennis. 13.
And all these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
And now these three remain. What does "and now"? When is that now?
Sometime like the present.
Yeah. So now he's talking about the present. And so the present, these three remain: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest. This is present. This is for the present life of the church. And so these things are for us now. Not something in the future, not at the end times. These are now for the life of the church. And faith, hope, and love. But the greatest is love. And to some degree, because love can be much more active, but it is without love, all these other things, and we'll go on to that in 2 weeks. Without love, nothing else is work. Nothing else, he's talked earlier, without love, you could speak the best, it's still like clanging and noisy, unintelligible noise. And so without love, none of the rest. And so another way of saying greatest in the Greek is the most beneficial. So the most beneficial is love. The most beneficial, and that means love in the church, love for the rest of the church members. It's for the present time. And so we'll stop here and start up with the next section, which has to deal with the edification of the church. And so as a homework, I'm going to start off with asking what edification means for the church. What does the word edification mean?
Edification?
Yeah. And so, what does that mean, and how does that impact the church? That's your homework. Actually, we'll talk about it next time.
What was the question?
The next section is going to be for the edification of the church. What does edification mean? That's your homework. And Charmaine read last. Joy, can you close us in prayer?
Message that you have for us in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's always a challenge to remember to act in love. But help us day by day to remember your words to us and to put into practice what you would have us do as Christians.
thank you for your time.